Buying a used car for under $5,000 can feel like rolling the dice. And that's exactly why buying an older used car isn't really about finding the cheapest car you can afford. It's about finding the right car. Because there are still older vehicles out there that can give you years of dependable transportation without constantly draining your bank account. Some of them aren't particularly exciting. Some of them aren't especially modern. And a few of them are cars you probably wouldn't even think about when shopping for a $5,000 vehicle. But that's what makes this list interesting. Today, we're counting down 5 used cars under $5,000 that can still make a surprisingly smart purchase. Let's get started. Number 5. Lincoln MKZ. Let's start with something unexpected. The Lincoln MKZ from the early 2010s. Now, I know what you're thinking. Lincoln? Under $5,000? Reliable? That doesn't sound like a combination that should work. But the MKZ is one of those used luxury cars that can make a lot more sense than its badge suggests. And that's because you're getting something that feels substantially more expensive than the price you'll pay today. The early 2010s MKZ was offered with a 3.5-liter V6, producing around 263 horsepower, paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission. That gives this sedan plenty of power for highway driving, merging, and passing. And some versions were available with all-wheel drive, which makes the MKZ particularly interesting for buyers who live in areas where rain and snow are a regular part of life. But the real attraction is inside. The MKZ gives you the kind of equipment that would have cost considerably more in many mainstream cars. Leather seating, heated seats, available cooled front seats, premium audio, and a cabin that still has that upscale feel, even though the car is now more than a decade old. That's the first reason I like the MKZ. You're not simply buying transportation. You're getting a comfortable luxury sedan without paying luxury car money. But here's the important part. If you're shopping for one of these under $5,000, condition matters more than the badge. At this age, you're not buying a new MKZ. You're buying a used example that could have lived a very different life from the one sitting next to it. So I would look carefully at the transmission behavior, steering system, suspension, fluid leaks, electrical equipment, and overall maintenance history. The source data behind this list puts average annual repair cost around $500, which is surprisingly reasonable for a luxury sedan of this age. Of course, that doesn't mean every MKZ will cost only $500 a year. One neglected example can completely change that equation. And that's why my buying rule here is simple. Don't buy the cheapest MKZ you can find. Buy the best maintained MKZ you can find. If the interior is clean, the drivetrain behaves properly, the maintenance history is believable, and the seller can explain what has been replaced recently, you've got something worth considering. So why is it only number 5? Because although the MKZ offers a tremendous amount of comfort and equipment for the money, there are 4 cars on this list that I would trust even more when the priority is simple, inexpensive, long-term transportation. And one of them comes from a brand you probably wouldn't expect. Number 4. Pontiac Vibe. This is where things get really interesting. The 2003 to 2008 Pontiac Vibe might be one of the biggest hidden gems in the entire used car market. Why? Because underneath that Pontiac badge is a very familiar piece of Toyota engineering. The Vibe was developed as a joint project between General Motors and Toyota, and it shares its basic architecture with the Toyota Matrix. That means you're essentially getting the practicality of a compact hatchback combined with Toyota-style mechanical simplicity. And that's a pretty attractive combination when you're shopping on a $5,000 budget. Under the hood, the Vibe was available with Toyota's 1.8-liter 4-cylinder, and these engines have a reputation for going a very long way when they're properly maintained. It's not unusual to see examples with more than 200,000 miles still being used as everyday transportation. That's exactly the kind of vehicle you want when your budget is limited, because every dollar you save on the purchase price can disappear very quickly if the vehicle needs major repairs. The Vibe also has another advantage that many buyers overlook. It's practical. The rear hatchback design gives you much more usable cargo space than a traditional sedan. The rear seats fold down, giving you room for groceries, luggage, equipment, or even larger items that simply wouldn't fit inside a conventional compact car. And some versions were available with all-wheel drive. That makes the Vibe more versatile than its small size might suggest. Fuel economy is another advantage. The source material notes highway figures in the 35 to 38 miles per gallon range for some owners, making it an extremely economical choice. And maintenance is another reason this car deserves attention. Because it shares so many components with Toyota products, finding parts and mechanics familiar with the mechanicals isn't particularly difficult. The source data puts average annual repair costs around $400. Now, there is one thing I want to emphasize. The Vibe isn't valuable simply because it says Pontiac on the hood. It's valuable because of what's underneath it. That's why when shopping for one today, I would prioritize mechanical condition over appearance. A scratched bumper isn't necessarily a deal breaker. A major mechanical problem is. And that's a principle you should remember throughout this entire list. Cosmetic problems can be negotiable. Major mechanical problems can destroy a $5,000 budget. So inspect the engine, listen to the transmission, check for leaks, look underneath the vehicle, check the suspension, and most importantly, look for evidence that the previous owner actually maintained it. The Vibe is an excellent example of why knowledgeable used car buyers don't always follow the badge. Sometimes the best deal is hiding behind the wrong logo. But there's still one small hatchback ahead of it that might be even more impressive for someone who wants maximum practicality with minimal running costs. Coming in at number 3 is the 2007 to 2013 Honda Fit. And this is one of those cars that proves something important. Small does not mean cheap or fragile. In fact, the Honda Fit can be one of the smartest choices you can make when your budget is extremely limited. The reason starts with the engine. The Fit uses a 1.5-liter four-cylinder engine that's compact, efficient, and capable of very high mileage when properly maintained. The source material notes that many examples can run beyond 200,000 miles with routine maintenance. But the engine is only part of the story. The Fit's biggest advantage might actually be its interior. Honda's Magic Seat system gives this little hatchback an incredible amount of flexibility. The rear seats can be configured in different ways, allowing you to carry everything from groceries to bicycles to surprisingly large pieces of cargo. The source material cites up to 57.3 cubic feet of storage capacity with the seats configured appropriately. Think about that for a second. You're buying a small economy car, but inside it can behave more like a miniature cargo vehicle. That's why the Fit makes so much sense for students, commuters, first-time buyers, retirees, and anyone who simply doesn't want to spend a fortune maintaining a vehicle. Fuel economy is another major advantage. The source material puts combined fuel economy around 33 miles per gallon. And when gasoline prices go up, a car like this becomes even more attractive. But here's something you need to remember. A cheap Honda Fit is not automatically a good Honda Fit. You're looking for the right example. The source material mentions issues involving ignition coils and power steering on some early cars. So before buying, pay attention to how the engine runs. Check the steering. Look for warning lights. Test every electrical feature. And don't skip the pre-purchase inspection just because the car is cheap. In fact, I'd argue the opposite. The cheaper the car, the more important the inspection can be. Because when you're spending only a few $1,000s, one major repair can represent a huge percentage of the vehicle's value. And that's why the Fit earns number 3. It's efficient, it's practical, It's inexpensive to operate, and it has a reputation for longevity. But now we're getting to the two cars I'd pay especially close attention to if I were shopping for a reliable used vehicle on a very tight budget. Number 2. Toyota Avalon. Now we're getting serious. And if you've ever wanted Lexus-like comfort without paying Lexus money, this is the kind of car you need to know about. The Avalon has always occupied an interesting position in Toyota's lineup. It's larger and more comfortable than a Corolla or Camry, but it doesn't carry the luxury brand price tag. And the early 2000s Avalon combines that comfort with a very straightforward drivetrain. Under the hood is a 3-liter V6. And according to the source material, many examples can surpass 250,000 miles with basic maintenance. Now, 250,000 miles is not a guarantee. Any car that old needs to be evaluated individually, but the underlying point is important. The Avalon has the kind of mechanical simplicity that makes an older used car attractive. There's no need to chase the latest technology. There's no need to worry about whether the newest turbocharged system has been properly maintained. Instead, you have an older, naturally aspirated V6 and a traditional automatic transmission. The source material specifically highlights the 4-speed automatic as simple, smooth, durable, and potentially less expensive to maintain than many newer drivetrain designs. And then there's the comfort. This is where the Avalon separates itself from many cheap used cars. The cabin is quiet, the ride is soft, there's plenty of interior room, and for long-distance driving, the Avalon can feel dramatically more expensive than its used car price suggests. That's why owners have sometimes compared it to a Lexus in disguise. But now, let me give you the important warning. An Avalon this old isn't a $5,000 car in the same way a 5-year-old car is a $5,000 car. You're buying an older vehicle, and age itself creates problems. Rubber components age, suspension components wear, interior materials deteriorate, dashboards can crack, seals can leak, and previous owners may have neglected maintenance. The source material specifically mentions cosmetic dashboard issues and worn suspension components on some early examples. So here's my buying rule for the Avalon. Condition beats mileage. I'd rather buy a well-maintained Avalon with higher mileage and documented service than a lower mileage example that has been neglected. Look underneath, check the suspension, check for fluid leaks, test the transmission, make sure the air conditioning works, and inspect the maintenance history. Because if you find the right one, you're getting something that offers an unusually strong combination of comfort, durability, and low ownership cost. And that's exactly why it reaches number 2. But there's one car left. And this final car isn't just reliable, it's one of the most recognizable names in the history of the American used car market. Number 1. Toyota Camry. And here we are. Number 1 is the 2002 to 2006 Toyota Camry. This probably isn't a surprise, but sometimes the obvious answer is obvious for a reason. For decades, the Camry has been the choice for families, commuters, older drivers, and people who simply want their car to start every morning and get them where they need to go. And when you're shopping under $5,000, that philosophy becomes even more important. You're not looking for a flashy car. You're not looking for the newest technology. You're looking for something that works. The source material identifies the 2002 to 2006 Camry as one of the most reliable used sedans in this price range. And the reason starts with the powertrain. These cars were available with Toyota's 2.4-liter 4-cylinder. The source material highlights the chain-driven design and the potential for these engines to surpass 200,000 miles when properly maintained. But reliability isn't the only reason the Camry takes the number 1 spot. It's the entire ownership experience. The car is comfortable, it's quiet, it's easy to drive, parts are widely familiar, and the maintenance costs are relatively manageable. The source material puts average annual maintenance and repair costs around $388. Again, that's an average reference point, not a promise that every 20-year-old Camry will cost $388 a year. At this age, condition matters enormously. But when you combine the Camry's reputation, availability, practicality, and enormous number of examples on the road, it becomes very difficult to ignore. Fuel economy is another advantage. The source material cites highway economy around 30 miles per gallon, which makes the Camry practical for commuting and long-distance driving. And inside, the formula is simple. You don't get all the technology found in modern cars, but that's partly the point. There are fewer things to complicate your ownership experience. Now, that doesn't mean these Camrys are perfect. The source material mentions minor oil seepage and oxygen sensor failures on some early examples. And after 2 decades, you also need to consider age-related wear. So when inspecting one, don't just look at the mileage, look at the maintenance history. What's the most reliable used car you've ever owned? Was it a Toyota, a Honda, maybe something completely unexpected? And if you've owned one of these cars on this list, tell us how many miles you got out of it. Your experience could help someone else make a smarter buying decision.